Hello, folks. Welcome back. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania. This video is born out of frustration from the executive order that President Trump issued about South Africa, in which the United States will no longer provide financial assistance to South Africa in the form of foreign aid, and also opened up a refugee settlement program for a class of people identified as Afrikaners. This has raised dozens of questions, and over the past several days, I've spent an inordinate amount of time trying to politely and patiently answer the questions of thousands of people online. Now, the U.S. government had an obligation, in my view, to clarify this on Monday or Tuesday. We're now into Tuesday, and so these questions still keep coming. Media in South Africa are lying to South Africans, distorting facts, taking factual information from U.S. government websites and distorting it, and other people who profess to be lawyers and those in the know are misleading you and lying to you. So I am here to answer the top 10, no, now it's 14 questions that have been asked of me over the past several days regarding the refugee program in South Africa. I'm going to explain it as best I can. I won't have some of the answers because they simply do not exist. Also, I will caution you that this program is longstanding. The United States Refugee Admissions Program exists. It's in law, and the program is currently suspended. On the 20th of January, 2025, after President Trump was sworn in, he signed executive order which froze this program and suspended all refugee arrivals in the United States. Now, traditionally, the United States takes in anywhere from 30 to 50 to 100 to 150,000 refugees per year, depending on conflicts and events going around the world. And so I'm going to answer those questions as best I can. I'm not an attorney. I am not selling you anything. I'm not asking you for anything. You don't have to give me a darn thing. You can listen to this video. You can tune it out. You can ignore it. That is your prerogative. What I'm here to do is to set the record straight as best as possible in the vacuum and dearth of information that currently exists because my government has not stepped up to the plate. Hopefully they'll do that soon. In expectation that the U.S. Embassy in Pretoria will eventually issue guidance, I'm going to tell you what we know about this. Okay, first off, the 14 most frequently asked questions about refugee status to come to America. First is, how do I apply for asylum? Well, why are you asking me about asylum? Let's be very clear about this. South African YouTubers, mainstream media, political parties are distorting and contorting the story here. Asylum is very different than refugee status. For asylum status, you have to have very specific requirements. So according to the U.S. government, asylum is for the following. Every year, people come to the United States seeking protection because they've suffered persecution or they fear that they will suffer persecution due to their race, their religion, their nationality, membership in a particular social group, political opinion. You can only file for an application if you are physically present in the United States and you're not a U.S. citizen. So let me give you an example about why people would ask for asylum. Mikhail Baryshnikov, a ballet dancer from the Soviet Union, members of the Soviet national gymnastics team or hockey team in America for a tour or for the Olympics or something like that, and they want to escape Soviet communism. They're here legitimately. They're inside the United States. They're allowed to be here. They defect. They go to authorities and ask for political asylum. That's why somebody would ask for asylum. Unfortunately, for years now, we've had this system abused by fraudulent asylum seekers coming to America. And that situation was exacerbated by Joe Biden's corrupt regime, allowing people to enter this country who were not legitimate asylum seekers and then illegally approving them to work in this country. Asylum seekers cannot work in this country. So what you're asking for, South Africa, is how do you apply for refugee status? Because that's what this program is for. You're not a migrant. You're not an immigrant. You're not an asylum seeker. If you go with the program that President Trump has authorized now, you'll be a refugee coming into America. So that's the first question. It's not asylum, it's refugee. I was told I have to prove persecution. Isn't this true? No, it's not. Lawyers on South African television have been telling you that you have to prove persecution. They are lying to you. They are misleading you. I cannot tell you the adjudication result for when you meet with a government official from the U.S. about whether you'll be accepted for refugee status based on persecution or fear of persecution. But this is what a refugee is. Under United States law, a refugee is someone who is located outside the United States, is of special humanitarian concern to the U.S., in this case, a class of people in South Africa initially identified as Afrikaners, but later that was modified at the South African American Embassy website to say minorities, and demonstrates that they were persecuted, so you can prove that, or you fear persecution due to similar circumstances as an asylum seeker, due to race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular social group. And you're also not firmly resettled in another country. In other words, you can't be a refugee and go one place and then destination shop to come to America. And you must be admissible to the United States, which means that you cannot be a criminal or have a criminal record. Now, I've also been asked this question about what about contempt of court 20 years ago? Well, I don't have an answer for that question. That's up to the authorities who make the adjudication. I would suspect that such an offense would be something that wouldn't prevent you from coming. We're talking about violent crimes that normally prevent you, people being involved with terrorist groups or communist groups or people who've committed heinous crimes. So, do you have to prove persecution? Not according to U.S. law. Each case is handled separately. If you have the fear of persecution, which honestly, almost every minority in South Africa can make that claim, then you should be granted refugee status. Why is it only for Afrikaners? Well, that's a good question. And this is one issue I have with President Trump's executive order in which he identified Afrikaners specifically and did not address this question in a more complete fashion. This is what he said in here. But let's be clear about this. And this is why I told people from the outset when I first broadcast this hours after President Trump signed the executive order that while it says Afrikaners in the executive order, it was likely later to be expanded or that definition would be provided. He says that this follows countless government policies designed to dismantle equal opportunity in employment, education, and business, and hateful rhetoric and government actions fueling disproportionate violence against racially disfavored landowners. That covers a whole lot of people. And then in the back, the refugee resettlement program is for Afrikaners in South Africa who are victims of unjust racial discrimination. Again, Afrikaner was not described. A lot of South Africans get all bent out of shape saying, well, I'm not an Afrikaner. How can you decide I'm not an Afrikaner? A lot of colored South Africans joined my chat and said, why not us? Same with Indians. Well, a lot of people identify as Afrikaners. It's not up to you how you identify. It's not up to me. It's up to how the U.S. Department of State and Department of Homeland Security identify an Afrikaner. And we see on the American website at the embassy in Pretoria that they now mention ethnic minorities. All right. This will be a broader definition than what initially came out. Next question. Do I need a passport? What documents do I need? Well, normally refugees come here in a crisis situation. So for instance, in Afghanistan, when Joe Biden screwed up the withdrawal, 160,000 Afghan refugees were dumped in our laps almost overnight within hours and days and weeks at a minimum. Many of these people had no identification whatsoever. The U.S. government can issue you travel documents to enter the United States in a crisis. Remember, most refugees are people fleeing from a conflict, slipping across the border to avoid being murdered in Sudan, Darfur, and South Sudan, or something like that. And so oftentimes they have only the clothing on their back, no identification, no documents. This is why the possibility exists for the U.S. government to issue those documents. In this case, South Africans aren't fleeing from a conflict. They're living in a country that ostensibly has the rule of law. They're just being given this refugee status based on oppression or persecution. So I don't know the answer, but I would expect you would probably need a passport. If you don't have a passport, you should probably get one if you're interested in this. And quite frankly, if you don't have a passport in South Africa, you should always have a passport. You never know when you need to travel somewhere. What documents do you need? That's the second part of this question. Well, it depends on what we're talking about here. Passports, obviously, photo identification, driver's license, any certifications you have for special skills. Not that that has any effect on your refugee application, but when you come to America, if you have special skills, you're a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer, something like that, you have a qualification, electrician, HVAC technician, you're going to have to get those skills translated into the requirements in the state where you reside. And that may take some time. So you have to have documents like that. Next question, where do I apply? Well, there's nowhere to apply at the moment. You can apply online normally to be given refugee status. Typically, you'll get an interview and they'll schedule for that. So people are like, when should I go to the embassy or consulate? Do not go to the embassy or consulate. Do not flood our embassy in Hatfield with a consular section. Do not flood our consular sections in Durban, Johannesburg, or Cape Town. You will simply be turned away and be disappointed. That is not how you do this. How do you apply? You're typically going to apply online this day and age, unless they create a special program that allows people to come in. But I would caution against that. There are a lot of racists in South Africa who use this as an excuse to attack ethnic minorities right now. We haven't seen physical assaults yet, but that may very well be in the offing. And I would not want to congregate around an American consulate or embassy if I was a South African in case people want to take revenge on you that's misdirected. So you would most likely apply online. But that has not been determined yet, as nothing has been determined in this program. How long do I have to wait to get to America? Well, if you apply for refugee status for this program and it's granted, it would likely come very quickly. We had the Afghans who were loaded in the back of C-17s and flown here without any vetting. They were just dumped here immediately. The other part of this is how long do you have to wait? It depends on how long it takes for the program to be established, how generous the American government is on providing transport or you providing your own transport, your own personal affairs at home. And likely in a refugee status, it's going to take longer for you in South Africa to wrap up your personal affairs than it would take for the U.S. government to process you. But that said, this process could go out over several months. We just do not know until the standards are published, and hopefully that will be soon. Can I pick my destination? Which state can I go to? Well, when we resettle refugees in America, you can indicate your preference, particularly if you have relatives or you have experience having been to state somewhere previously, and they may be inclined to send you there. However, the Department of Homeland Security will determine your destination, and that's where you go. But that doesn't mean you're stuck there forever. I mean, you get assistance for the first year from the U.S. government to get you settled, help you with job, employment services, finding work, and things like that. And then many people move on to a place they prefer. You can live anywhere you want in America. As long as you've got the resource, you can buy anything you want. You live anywhere. There are no codes or excluded zones. So two groups of people come to mind. Minnesota has long been a destination since the 1970s for refugees, the Vietnamese boat people, the Hmong from Laos, and Somalis who went there later, all people who fled their country as refugees and settled in Minnesota. And most of them have stayed there. And we see people like Ilhan Omar, which is a consequence of that. Next question, will they pay for my flight? I don't know the answer on this. I know that those Afghans who got to be back at C-17s didn't pay for their flights. And this also goes along with the line, what if the ANC tries to stop people from getting out of the country? I can't imagine that would be the case, but if that were the case, Israel flew its military aircraft in to evacuate Jews to be taken back to Israel or taken to Israel under refugee program in the past. It wouldn't be beyond their own possibility to see something like that. I seriously doubt that would happen in South Africa. Most likely people who leave and for refugee status to come to America from South Africa would go on commercial flight, most likely, and it may be paid for by the U.S. government. I don't know the answer to that, and we'll wait and see. Can I bring my family? Well, for refugees, oftentimes you can. You can bring your family. Someone put some fake news that I saw the other day online from the media from South Africa. It said that, no, you can't bring your family. You have to wait 2 years. No, they misread the State Department website, and I read that on my program, exactly what it says. If you are already in America in refugee status, you have 2 years, up to 2 years once you're here to apply to bring your family. But you can apply, all of you, before you ever come and see what the determination is. So yes, you can bring. Well, what about my parents? They're 90s. It doesn't affect anything. Refugee program doesn't distinguish between 92-year-olds and 2-year-olds. You're all just as valuable. You're human beings. You're Homo sapiens. So all can come. Same with job skills. We don't care if you're a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer. I mean, ultimately, many of us care, but the refugee program doesn't care. Doesn't care if you're a street sweeper. It cares that you're being persecuted or you fear persecution. And what about my pets? Well, what about your pets? South Africans seem to be very attached to their pets. I am not an expert on this, but someone who has qualified for refugee status jumped into our chat the other night and said that they were able to bring their pets. There's a method for doing that. Now, this is one where I expect that if you were able to bring your pets, you might be expected to pay for the transport. And I don't know how expensive that'll be coming out of South Africa today, but I know that I took my cats to Botswana when I moved to Botswana in 2010, and it cost me a lot of money because South Africa's outrageous veterinary standards. But leaving South Africa, it was far cheaper. I had to go from Botswana, drove them down to South Africa, and it was much cheaper by about half because I didn't have to deal with the ridiculous South African veterinary quarantine procedures. So how much does it cost? Well, it could cost a lot. If you are an Afrikaner who loves your culture, eventually it will cost your descendants, your progeny, their culture. No matter how much you claim that they will become Afrikaners, remain Afrikaners, within a generation or two, your offspring and their descendants will be Americans. They might remember they're from South Africa. Maybe they'll keep ties, but they're not South African. And they may have a braai, but they're not South African. So that is a cost if you're willing to take that cost on. Many people are desperate enough that they don't really care. They'll do their best to keep their culture going. I actually had someone ask a question today about having Afrikaans schools. Why do you want Afrikaans schools if you want to come to America? Do you want to come to America and be like the people who come here that don't want to be part of this country? You're being made an offer. You can protect and guard your Afrikaans language. You can homeschool. But if you expect Americans to build schools so you can speak Afrikaans, you're living in a dream world. We already got people trying to force Spanish down our throat, and it's not even our language. So how much does it cost? I don't know. There's other costs. We don't know. If the U.S. government picks up the transportation cost and gives you a stipend, which is typically the case with refugee groups that come here and helps you in your first year, then it's probably not going to cost you much of anything. It's incredibly generous. Almost no other country in the world is as generous as America is under its refugee program. The next question, can I work in America? Absolutely. You are encouraged to work. We want you to get off your bum and work. Absolutely. Asylum seekers cannot work. It's illegal, although Joe Biden authorized it unconstitutionally, but it's illegal. A refugee is expected to try to find work in America. If you have special skills, you're going to have to get those certificates and certifications translated, or you might have to requalify for certain things so you can practice your medicine or your skills here in America. But if you want to go work at a retail shop, you want to work in, if you're a software coder, you don't need a certification for that. You just get to it and find a job. And they usually have job placement services as well. Plus, every state has an employment bureau, and they help you find employment. What about my money? Can I get my money out of South Africa? Well, South Africa long ago implemented stringent restrictions on expatriating cash and resources out of South Africa because of the cash and brain drain that's been going on since the late 1990s. First with white South Africans fleeing to the United Kingdom, Canada, less so to the US, but also to Australia in heavy numbers and New Zealand. And then colored and black South Africans leaving in the past 10 or 15 years because they were also frustrated by the government. So what about your money? Well, you're subject to the constraints the South African government puts in place for transfer of money. Some people are saying they'll put their resources in Bitcoin. Well, that's speculation. I'm not going to advise you to do anything. But South African government doesn't control Bitcoin, but they do control Rand. So you decide for yourself. And finally, when can I get to America? Well, we don't know. The program isn't established. We'll have to wait for the State Department to issue the guidance. And then those who are interested will have to apply. They'll have to be approved. Then arrangements have to be made, and then you come over. All that could take a week, or it could take 6 months. Who knows? We don't know. I would expect it would go very fast, though. This is a very clear message that Donald Trump has sent to South Africa about its damage to our nation and its abuse of its own constitution and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So, having said that, I am encouraging no one to leave South Africa. I am discouraging no one to leave South Africa. I'm heartsore and heartbroken that South Africans feel the need to leave their country, but I empathize and I fully understand why some people would feel this is the path out. And for those of you who denigrate those who want to leave, shut your mouth. You don't know the circumstance of these people. You weren't in their shoes, and you have no right to treat them poorly. And for those of you who think the people that stay are fools, well, shut your mouth, because they cherish their culture and they're willing to risk all despite the high costs to stay in South Africa. And for those of you who leave, you may very well be a patriotic South African. But when you come to America and you get refugee status, you'll be a refugee in America who is a South African citizen. Eventually, you must apply within a year normally for permanent residency as a refugee. You get that, and then you can apply to become a citizen when you meet the minimum threshold. Once you become an American citizen, you're not a South African anymore. You don't owe fealty to South Africa, you owe fealty to the U.S. Constitution. And that's how generous we are. So there you have it, folks. I hope this is helpful. I hope that it also dispels a bunch of the rumors and misleading statements. And I expect to see a whole bunch of comments, but you don't know what you're talking about. But News 24 told me, but I heard this lawyer, that person told me, I was listening to Jack Aranda. Fine, go listen to them. Everything that someone's raised to me, everything I've seen in the media where people purport to make a claim, almost every time it's false. And even stories like the ones I saw by Andrew Thompson in News 24 that purport to give you information are misleading. Whether it's intentional or not, I don't know, but I'm on the impression it's intentional. I'm not misleading you. I'm not asking for your money. You don't have to give me anything. You don't have to listen to anything I say. And I stand behind what I said here. My analysis is 100% correct as of the information available on this date, the 11th of February, 2025. And if you don't agree with me, go check the receipts out. Go to the State Department's website, check these things out, read fully President Trump's executive order, read the American Embassy's further update that came out on Monday, the 10th of February. And there you have it, folks. If you're not a subscriber, please become one. I put a lot of effort into this to help people understand what's going on, and spread the word, share this on social media so that people become familiar with this video and become better informed so they're not misled by fake media and legacy media and crooked politicians. God bless and take care.